Hey guys, Jack here. Looks a bit of an odd setup, but I'm doing a discussion video today on this card here, Grand Horn of Heaven. And this discussion is my opinion of why this card really isn't that broken. If you don't know what it does, the card says during your opponent's main phase, when they would special summon a monster or monsters, negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. Then your opponent draws one card, then end the main phase. That does sound pretty broken, and it is a really good card. I'm not going to deny that it is a beautiful card, and I'm running it over this guy. And this guy. There's a reason these other cards are here. I'm going to talk about them as well. But, yeah. First things first, to get on with it, it's... compared to a Solemn Warning, Solemn Warning, ignore that beeping. Compared to a Solemn Warning, it's not that good, as it can only be activated during your opponent's main phase. So if they were going to say you were going against heroes or something, and they were going to get an OTK off or whatever, you couldn't use it then to stop them to negate the summon, where you could do with the Solemn Warning. So that's an aspect where it's stupid, because stuff like Cosmos can tag out. It doesn't stop them in the battle phase. Also, the fact that your opponent draws a card, so your opponent goes plus off of that. Actually, they don't really go plus or minus really off of that. But the fact that it's a draw a card just means they potentially lose nothing, really, depending on what they draw. But yeah, the reason I think this card was made is more to keep the lower tier decks in and allow people to keep playing them against the meta, so that they actually have a chance. Also, this guy here, Exton, I think it's a replacement for that as well. Because if you look what's coming up in the meta, it's you've got your Magispectors, your Cosmos, your what's it called, your Magicians, you've got things like that, and your Psyframes. That's another reason Psyframes don't really get touched by that, and they can just negate it or whatever. But yeah. You've got your Magicians, which are pendulums, and your Magispectors, which are pendulums, which is why potentially Exton was banned, because of that. The fact that it could just wipe an opponent's board, wipe out back row, wipe out a pendulum scale, and wipe out monsters, which just meant pendulum monsters potentially just lost everything, which means they just lose there. Whereas Grand Horn just gets rid of the monsters. So stuff like Magispectors and Magicians, even Ignites, for example, because Ignites are really good as well. It wouldn't surprise me if they started topping more as well, because they are a really good deck. But with Grand Horn just gets rid of their monsters and puts them to grave, which is a huge hit for any pendulum deck really. But they've got this card, Pot of Riches, that they can just recycle with that. That's why Pot of Riches is so good, because you run it at 1 or 2, or even side it in case you know your opponent runs this, which is really good. So that's the main reasons why, because decks aren't really hit by it so much. It's more just to stall. You can make your opponent lose a turn, really, because they can special summon a monster, you activate it, they draw a card, their main phase ends. But if you do it in their main phase 1, they can just go skip straight into their main phase 2 and continue a play there. But if they can't continue a play, you've just stalled them out. And against the meta decks now, just stalling them out isn't really good enough, because potentially they are just going to go, you stall them out, they can take a bit of damage, and it's going to go boom, explode. Another reason why, back to the Exton point, is the fact that it doesn't blow up back row, whereas Exton does. It just blows up a field, pretty much, if they pendulum summon, or it just blows up a monster, depending on how many they summon and how they summon it, because Soul Charge should blow them all up as well if you used it when they Soul Charge. But Exton does get rid of back row in pendulums as well, which means that they don't have that safety net there either. So if pendulum monsters get all destroyed with this guy, with Exton, they don't really have, and they don't have any back row either, they've pretty much lost. And back row recovery is a hell of a lot harder than monster recovery nowadays, because, well, it's never been easy. Unless you're running like Magical Stone of Excavation and stuff like that, and that's a terrible, terrible card in my opinion. But yeah, the reason I'm running this over these, well, this guy's banned, as everyone knows, but Solemn Warning has the cost of life points, which means you're restricted to when you can activate it. So you could be on very low life points, and your opponent special summons a monster, and you cannot activate it. and you cannot activate it, and then you lose. Like, there's no way for you to recover if to stop a special summon is the only way. Solemn Judgment's banned, obviously, but the thing about Solemn Judgment is you can use it whatever life points you're on, and it does negate spells and traps as well, which is possibly, it's just half your life points, use it whenever sort of thing, which means you can stop everything, which is really, really, really good. But yeah, with back to Solemn Warning's actually at 1 as well, whereas Grand Horn's at 3. Yeah, Solemn Warning's really, really good because it doesn't draw the card, but it can do it anytime, but in my opinion, I prefer Grand Horn, because against stuff like Heroes or whatever, there's a little rogue deck which actually does really, really well. If they special summon, and you know they're going to special summon in their battle phase using a monster they've got on the field, you'd want to stop the first special summon with that, which just takes away their resource to actually do that with like a mass change or whatever. And Solemn Scalding, in my opinion, don't run that unless you're running a deck that likes no back row, whatever at all, because it is terrible. You have to have it has to be the only set card on your field to activate it. It's pay 3,000 life points to do a Solemn Judgment, but the fact that it's a huge restriction to be the only card set. So in my opinion, it's only good in decks that require, like, if you would run if like the only trap you would run would be 3 Royal Decree, that's when I'd only use that. But with Grand Horn, you can use that in any deck. You can have a load of setback. You can run it in trap monsters, and you're not fussed because you can just activate it up. Any deck that sets loads of quick plays and stuff like that. Magi-Spectres can't use Solemn Scalding because of all the spells and traps that they have to set to tribute their wind spellcaster type monsters to get their effects off. So that's why Solemn Scalding's terrible, and why I'd prefer Grand Horn. But I don't think Grand Horn will get hit. In my opinion, if Grand Horn gets hit, it will only get put down to 2. It would be semi-limited, and then people will run 2 Grand Horn, a warning. But if it does get hit to 1 or banned, I don't see why, because it does keep the older decks up and running. It does give rogue decks, like, you've seen this card if you've watched my Gaga deck profile. I run 2, and I run 1 in my Blackwings. That's where these 3 are from. But in Gagagas, it just gives me that. That's what keeps me going if my opponent's bringing out big monsters. It gives rogue decks like that and Blackwings, which is an X-meta deck, which is getting more support still, but at the moment it's still not up to it can't really compete with the meta as it is. And I find that running a Grand Horn is really good because of the fact it does end my opponent's main phase, and it does give me that chance to just go, come on, I can maybe bring it back, sort of thing. But in the meta, it's against the meta, it is really, really good, but it doesn't fully stop them. It just sort of makes them have to waste a couple more cards to get their plays off and get to do what they need to do. Also, back to the excellent thing, it doesn't destroy a scale, which means your opponent, if you have cards in hand as well, they can just, again, pendulum summon next turn and they haven't lost any advantage. And the fact that they do still get to keep their back row, the fact that you cannot negate back row with it either, just it's such a good card in the fact that it's not too overpowered, but it just gives you that boost to what you need. The only time I can actually see this card getting hit, really, is when that new Counter Fairy card comes out. That's it. Just that new Counter Fairy, the one that allows you to search out for counter traps. And the new Solemn card, a Solemn Advice, or whatever it's called. The one there you pay 1/5 to negate a spell or trap or a monster effect, and you have to choose between. It's only 1/5 though, it's a Solemn Judgment with 1/5 cost. It's that card, I can see that card getting hit, but Grand Horn I don't see getting hit compared to that. But the only thing that I could see getting hit in the situation when they get that new Counter Fairy Pendulum is the actual Counter Fairy Pendulum itself, because that's the one that does all the searching. You don't want to stop. You could lower the amount of cards it's able to search, but I'd rather just stop the search altogether or put the search down to lower, because drawing into a Grand Horn is really good, and in my opinion, it's one of the new staples like MST and Bottomless and stuff like that. But at 3, it's really, really good because you've got stuff like, you've got Grand Horn at 3. Not Grand Horn, you've got Horn of Heaven at 3, which is really good because that does the exact same, apart from it tributes a monster. You have to tribute a monster as the cost to do that. which can be a big cost nowadays, but in stuff like magicians and stuff, you're tributing it off and just the top of the extra deck. So that's a really good card to run in that sort of situation. And Blackhorn's just sort of being fucked off with its errata and everything, which is just stupid. But in my opinion, it's also like a Dark Bribe. It's a counter trap where your opponent gets to draw a card and stop something. So it's just the Dark Bribe of monster. It's the Dark Bribe of monster negation. That's all it is, really. So it's not too broken, and the fact that it ends the main phase does just give older decks that last push that they need to maybe win, or just to bring it back at least. And the meta decks, it touches the meta decks run it against a meta deck, it's going to touch them, but then just going to come back and swarm again. But yeah, they're my opinions on Grandhorn and why I think it's not as broken as people say it is and why it shouldn't get hit. If you have any of opinions about Grandhorn, could you please leave them in the description below? And I would also like to ask you to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video. I will see you next time with another discussion, deck profile, maybe not mine, but yeah, I will see you again next time. Goodbye.